Alright, what do we have on the docket for today?
Really, the SJWs have just shown their true colors here. They want things to be darker and, of course, less white, because they hate white people and want less of us around.
I'm sorry, what? This video was brought to you by the wonderful people on screen here who support me over at Patreon. If you want to support this channel and what I do, then please check the link in the description or the link at the end of the video. Alrighty, so I guess I'm dealing with no bullshit again, but this time it's gonna be a little different. Last time he was defending the banning of an episode of Arthur, and also riding high on Alabama's abortion ban. Today he's complaining about Pokemon. Or rather, he's complaining about people complaining about Pokemon, which means I'm complaining about him complaining about people complaining about Pokemon. Yeah, anywho, this series is near and dear to my heart, so let's go ahead and get right into the fan art. First off, we have a Rule 63 Suris from Bumbling Bee, we have a Furry Suris from Devuk, and then we finally have a Vaporeon Suris from Stripes. Thank you all for submitting your fan art as usual, and let's get right into No BS's video.
Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about the Pokemon video game franchise. This series has a long and storied history and a special place in my heart as well. Pokemon is something I grew up on, playing the original Game Boy video games as a kid, and I even watched the original seasons of the cartoon back in the mid-90s. Also, I remember seeing the first Pokemon film called Pokemon the First Movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back, and I saw that when it came out back in 1998. Then there was also the Pokemon card game, which of course was legendary in its own right. I remember collecting 2 or 3 foiled Charizard cards myself, thinking they were more valuable than gold to me at the time. So yeah, needless to say, I've been a bit of a Pokemon nerd over the years. Admittedly though, I lost track of the original game series around 2013, but I did play just about every entry up until then. And since then, I've certainly kept track of Pokemon too. Pokemon Go, for example, was a mobile version of the game that came out in 2016, of which I also played many hours of that summer.
And one would ask why we need to wait an entire minute for you to get through all of this backstory on the Pokemon franchise. Outside of the obvious necessity to hit the 10-minute mark, of course.
The summer of 2016 was also when we made our first and last video about Pokemon here on No Bullshit. If you don't remember, Pokemon Go was a bit of a phenomenon when it first came out back then. Everyone and their mother was giving it a go, so to speak. And this popularity, of course, led to more exposure and eventually more public scrutiny too. One really bogus story that we covered from the Young Turks about this really took the cake on Pokemon Go though. Back then, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks actually had the balls to say that Pokemon Go was putting black people in danger. Ridiculous, I know, and it's really just based on the Young Turks and their social justice warrior prejudice and reverse racism.
I mean, is it really social justice warrior-y to speculate on the possibility that something that's already more dangerous for black people than white people, i.e. walking down the street, could extend to a mobile game where you literally have to walk down the street to play? I mean, as recently as last year, we literally have cases of officers being told to arrest random people as long as they were black and had at least somewhat of a record they could use, considering that it's a lot easier to convict somebody if they're a repeat offender, even if they aren't guilty of the new crime that's being pinned on them. But I'm not going to delve too far into your older video, let's focus on this more recent one. Oh, and I am providing a news source on the claim that I just made because that's what I do. Also, how is it reverse racism? How is reverse racism even a concept? Anywho, continuing on.
I put a link to that original video below if you want the full story and my full rebuttal. You can click on that to catch up, but for now, let's go ahead and move on to the latest controversies around Pokemon happening right now. Because much like how the Young Turks chimed in on this before, so too are some other SJWs deciding it's time for them to pass judgment on another upcoming Pokemon fad. Since Pokemon Go's wild success that started in the summer of 2016, well, Pokemon has really had a sort of renewal in popularity that's gone along with that. Pokemon Go not only brought back former fans of the series, it also brought in lots of new interest too. This resulted in Nintendo making a spin-off of Pokemon Go called Pokemon Let's Go, which came out last year on the Nintendo Switch. It received middling to modest praise and proved to be fun for some, but many more were still waiting for an official new entry to the series, which now will inevitably be coming to the Nintendo Switch console.
And we are almost a third of the way through your video, and you still haven't gotten to your actual point.
Enter the latest entry in the Pokemon series, to be called Pokemon Sword and Shield. And I have to say, I'm pretty excited for this one, and I'm not even too invested in Pokemon anymore recently. Many more others are though, and that's why this new release that's set to come out this November, well, there's a lot of eyes on this one to say the least. And that of course brings a lot of pressure onto the project as well. And if the first bit of drama about this is any indicator, it may be a rocky road ahead for this new series called Pokemon Sword and Shield. You see, there was lots of new information coming out about this game last week at the E3 gaming conference, which we talked about in another way yesterday. And well, they had a whole section for Nintendo at that conference too, which led to lots of gameplay and announcements for the new Pokemon.
And can we please get to the gameplay and announcements that you're so worried over? I really feel like I should have just cut out this section of your video, but I don't want people to blame me for misrepresenting you by not including all of your footage.
Fortunately, many fans were not too impressed with what they saw there, which led to the first controversy about this. This Destructoid article, for example, says they are excited for the game still, but the E3 for Pokemon Sword and Shield was a bit of a letdown. This is mostly because the demo was a small, one-way, unexciting gym experience. Many would have preferred to explore the open world, a new area that's to be called the Wild Area, where players can roam freely, explore, and find new Pokemon creatures to train and collect. And I myself can also see the concern here. I too was expecting a sort of Zelda Breath of the Wild type open world thing here, after Nintendo killed it with that open world game and another legendary one called Mario Odyssey.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and have to issue our first correction here. Mario Odyssey isn't an open world game. It is literally just as level based as something like Mario 64, except the only difference is it doesn't have a hub world and you don't get kicked out of the level every time that you collect a star. Of course, in Mario Odyssey, stars are called moons, but yeah, it's really not that much different than any other Mario game in design. Is it more open? Yes, but it is not an open world Mario game. That nitpick out of the way, we still haven't gotten to your freaking point.
Hopefully Pokemon can pull off something like that too, but for now, we just don't know if it will yet. Next, this E3 controversy grew for Pokemon, as their new feature for the game, a so-called Dynamax ability, well, all it really does is make your Pokemon bigger for like 3 turns, which is seemingly unimpressive so far. And finally, many fans were upset that this new and improved console premiere for the long-running Pokemon franchise, well, many had hoped Sword and Shield would feature the franchise's entire 800-plus character cast. When Pokemon and Nintendo announced this wouldn't be happening, many were upset about it to say the least.
Yeah, and there's pretty good reason for that, but let's go ahead and hear what you have to say about it before I offer my rebuttal.
And I think I understand both sides here too, but really, fans were just wishful thinking too much if you ask me.
So you understand both sides in almost an enlightened centrist type of way, but then you're going to come down hard on the side of the fans instead of the developers. Okay, let's hear it.
Assuming the company would make all 800 Pokemon into one game is a bit much. It would totally be cool, but I imagine the amount of CGI construction, animations, movesets, and balancing and so on, that's just too much for this project.
Okay. Do I need to actually let you in on some of the history of the Pokemon franchise? Here, let me go ahead and let you know what happened as early as Pokemon X and Y. In Pokemon X and Y, all Pokemon up to that point were given 3D models and animations, and all moves were given stock animations. This means that if one Pokemon used Double Kick, that Double Kick has the same animation for every single Pokemon, because the animation is literally just a 2D sprite superimposed on another 3D model. It doesn't actually mean anything, and it doesn't add anything to the programming. In fact, you can even see this in every Pokemon game up until this point that has used 3D models. Every single one of them just judders the model itself around, and then uses the 2D or 3D assets of the attack superimposed on the different Pokemon. This is a smart decision when you have a game with over 800 characters, but here's the thing. Since Pokemon X and Y, every single game has used the exact same models and the exact same animations. Even Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee use the exact same models and animations from the 3DS games. 3DS games also can only be about 2 gigabytes in size as per Nintendo's restrictions. So upscaling any of those models is not really going to lead to that much more data on a Nintendo Switch cartridge that can hold much more. You claim to understand the problem on both sides, but you seem to understand absolutely nothing of the history of the issue. As far as the Pokemon and animations are concerned, we're using the exact same engine we've been using for them since 2013. These idle animations are also the animations used in Pokemon Go, and the models are identical identical as well, with the exception of different shaders being used depending on the platform showing the game. For instance, in Pokemon Let's Go and in Pokemon Go, the Pokemon look a little more vibrant than they do on the 3DS. On the 3DS, they look a little more washed out. But all that's besides the point. The point of the matter is that these animations and these Pokemon wireframes and models are all already made. All they have to do is be ported over. The actual development for the new game has to do with the world itself and creating that. The base of the game is already complete. We're literally using the same engine over and over again. This is a thing video game developers have done for years. But that's okay. You understand both sides of the issue, and it's the fans having wishful thinking, right? And we haven't even gotten into the SJW stuff that you're talking about, which I assume is the actual meat of your video, but we're about halfway through and we haven't quite gotten there yet, and I don't know why I'm not surprised. So to summarize, the Pokemon developers are being kind of lazy with their exclusions of certain Pokemon. I'm hoping this doesn't mean that old Pokemon are going to come in the form of DLC or something, but who knows? Nintendo's a weird beast.
The game would basically cost so much to make if they did all that, they couldn't even make money on this product.
And in reference to everything I said before, that's definitely not the case, considering that most of that work has already been done. But I don't expect you to have done any of the research on this.
So, them sticking to their usual limited amount of Pokemon setup does still make sense.
Except we haven't had a limited amount of Pokemon setup for a long time. All of the Pokemon have been programmed into every recent game. This is also evidenced by the fact that the Pokemon Bank has been pretty ubiquitous from the get-go. For those who don't know, the Pokemon Bank is an online app that you can use to store any Pokemon that you've caught in any of your games. This is a convenient way of transferring Pokemon from earlier games into the newer ones without having to re-catch them. Something similar was done back in Pokemon Gold and Silver when I was a kid, so this isn't even a new concept for the franchise. But that's okay, we wouldn't expect No Bullshit to do research on his videos now, would we?
Would be cool if they could find a way to add in more later, but I won't hold that against them too much either.
It will either be DLC or utilization of the Pokemon Bank.
Next, let's talk about this new human character for the game, which can be seen in this still from the demo. Her name is Nessa, and she's a new gym leader who wields water-type Pokemon. She's also the topic of the next controversy about this new game. This is the SJW-influenced, really stupid one I hinted at earlier. Apparently, Nessa has been very well received by fans so far, so much so that she's also been getting her own fan art drawn and made about her by some of her more hardcore fans. Not too big of a surprise since anime weebs love their sexy drawings and all.
And my fan art section has no idea what you're talking about.
But also, it's worth mentioning that a lot of this attention is coming because Nessa is dark-skinned, of course. She's likely black or brown or something, and that's going to come up more again later.
She's likely black or brown or something? You are aware that none of those are races, right? They're just skin tones? And you literally are looking at a still of her right now on your video. You know what her skin tone is. You're literally staring at it right now. In fact, you could put her still into Photoshop and you could actually find the exact hex value for what her skin tone is. But it's black, brown, or something? Do you write your own scripts? Because it's lines like this that make me worry.
First though, let's look at an article from our least favorite pro-SJW gaming rag called Polygon. Their article's called All Hail Nessa, the new water-type gym leader from Pokemon Sword and Shield, with a subtitle saying, "We have decided to stan a queen." Jesus, settle down there, guy. You act like you've never seen a minority before.
And we would assume that you hadn't either, because she's black, brown, or something, right? Again, I assume you write your own script, and this is why I worry.
And quit trying so hard to treat them like they're princesses all the time. You're patronizing the minorities, dude, and girls don't like that either.
Wait. How old are you? First of all, patronizing anyone isn't necessarily a problem. You literally live in a capitalist society. Patronizing people is what keeps the lights on. If you're worried about somebody patronizing someone, then maybe you should take it up with capitalism. But that said, that's not really my main concern with what I just heard. I literally just heard you say that old 5-year-old playground shtick, girls don't like it when you do X. Is this really what people come to your channel for? Is this how you gained hundreds of thousands of subscribers? By talking to your audience like you're on a playground in the 5th grade? Like I said before, I have my concerns.
Regardless, let's read on and see how cringy this shit gets.
he says unironically, as no bullshit.
Look, I'm never so ready to end a 22-year-old relationship with a character that I grew up with, but Misty, it is time to step aside. Nessa is the new all-time master of water Pokemon. If you say so, buddy. To me though, in my opinion, Misty is a Pokemon legend. She's in the original game and the anime and everything. So me seeing some hot minority in a swimsuit in 2019 isn't going to make me just drop our girl Misty and forget about her. And let's be real here, guys. The reason this Polygon writer wants Misty to step aside is because she's white, of course.
No. That's not the implication of that at all. They may find Nessa more attractive, and they may also appreciate the fact that minority representation in Pokemon has been a pretty rare thing, all things considered. That's not discarding somebody because they're white, that's accepting someone else because they're a minority. It literally has nothing to do with whiteness.
That's exactly what this coded dog whistle-like phrase means.
He says, unironically, as no bullshit, the right-winger who can't even accurately dog whistle to his fellow right-wingers.
When it's coming from left-wingers. And in turn, the main reason this SJW is fawning over Ness so much is because she's brown, even though they won't ever admit this directly.
And that would make sense, since prior to the 5th generation of Pokemon, there really wasn't a whole lot of representation from black people in the franchise outside of, well, Brock. And even Brock's story in the original Pokemon anime was about a guy who had to take care of all of his brothers and sisters because his father abandoned him, which is pretty much considered a black stereotype here in America, but it was still a touching story nonetheless. Brock's original character arc literally had him getting his father to accept responsibility for being a dad, instead of being a deadbeat who sold rocks. Outside of him, though, you didn't really get much until you got to, like, the Unova Gym and Elite Four members. Even generic trainer character models were mostly all white until Generation 5 and 6. So, yeah, outside of, Brock and, maybe Phoebe from Generation 3, there really wasn't a whole lot of representation. So you're literally getting upset that someone else is happy that there's representation in a game franchise that historically hasn't had that. Representation that, mind you, doesn't actually have any negative effect.
They do come pretty close to saying this, though, in their next bit. Take a look at this part. Her character design is fire, or water. She rocks perfectly applied eyeliner and purple eyeshadow. I'm obsessed with her hoop earrings, and she dons a Poke-inspired swimsuit fit for an athlete. Also, she has floaties on her sandals. Okay. Nessa also has fans excited because she is also among a growing list of Pokemon Sword and Shield character cast that are dark-skinned, along with Leon and Hop. This is important given that many Pokemon characters are often white. Why is that important, though?
Because representation in media is a positive thing. It's the thing that literally prevents people from seeing white as, quote, normal, and start seeing everyone as normal, because, like it or not, media has a huge influence on everyone. Are you the type of person that would literally argue that a white person should be allowed to play a black person? Because that's how we got blackface. That's quite literally how we got blackface. We didn't want to have black representation in our media, and so we had white people play black people. I'd really rather not go back to that time, and especially considering that we're dealing with fictional characters that can be color painted anything the developers want. It takes literally zero effort to paint a character in a different color that makes it to where a certain minority group is more represented. It takes no extra development time, it takes no extra thought, and the net positive is more representation in media.
Really, I hate it when these leftists just assume things like this, things that they like are good and important without any explanation.
He says, unironically, as no bullshit.
Especially when you're writing an article for a wannabe news site. They should at least try and say some bullshit and explain this, like saying something like, representation is important because, yada yada yada. But instead, it's just assumed, and I really don't even know why anymore. Could be a slew of bullshit reasons, but when you get right down to it, people like this just think white characters are bad because they hate white people, and they want less white characters and more browns, of course.
Where was that implied in this article? Are you literally just pioneering the whole great replacement theory? Because this sounds like textbook great replacement. You're literally using the Pokemon franchise to frame a talking point about white nationalism. How did we get here?
I mean, that's not even really an exaggeration or assertion anymore. That's literally what these SJWs say they want now. And somehow, they don't see this as offensive or racist at all.
Where are the SJWs, specifically the organized ones that can make any type of impact on the world, that are saying that we need fewer white people? Please, can you direct me to where they are? Because this ain't it, Chief. Don't get me wrong, I'm really glad that Lauren Southern is no longer on YouTube, so she can't propagate the whole Great Replacement bullshit, but you really don't need to take up that mantle.
Even though, if I said the opposite, they would certainly call me a racist or a fascist or Nazi.
Racist, fascist, or Nazi? Well, you've historically been pretty anti-Jew to the point of almost being a Holocaust denier. In fact, actually, with a conversation that you had between you and Jeezy, you literally said that there were only 1 million people killed. We no longer have the Twitter conversation that you had this in, but that's because you actually managed to get your account suspended, thus deleting all of that history. So I'm gonna go ahead and do something really weird and just trust the Rationale Wiki article on this. Something that I normally hate to do, but you managed to get your account suspended, so it's really hard for me to fact check you more on this. You've also unapologetically said that there's no such thing as a Nazi, and that Nazi is just code for people that you don't like. Apparently, you think that we stopped them all in 1945. But what can I say for somebody who actually supports Richard Spencer? So I think Nazi and fascist definitely work, but what about racist? Well, you've defended race realism as common sense. You've even actually said that white supremacy isn't a thing anymore. So, aside from race realism, I can't find anything that overtly calls you a racist, but I can find several things where you deny actual forms of racism that do in fact still exist. I really wish that you hadn't have gone and gotten your Twitter suspended, though. I would have loved to have had accurate sourcing for every single bullshit thing you had said. But instead, the only thing I can do is provide the Rationale Wiki article on it, and let everybody know that as with everything on Rationale Wiki, please take it with a grain of salt.
For example, if I cheered on a character just for being white and then said it's important to have more white characters in this game, well, this Polygon writer would certainly call me a racist for that.
Yeah, when your game has 95% white people, saying that it needs more white people is kind of a stupid statement. And at that point, I can only inquire as to why you would say that that game needed more white people in it. I would assume, since, again, the games have almost 95% white people, that there's something about that other 5% that you don't like and would need to be erased by having more white people. Which, again, would be weird, because you said that white supremacy doesn't exist in tweets on your account that's suspended. But then you literally hide behind a white supremacist talking point. This is a very awkward video, and I don't know how I'm supposed to feel.
But somehow, in his messed up mental gymnastics driven by a left-wing world, well, being anti-white is okay, according to these whack jobs.
Where in this whole article did they say that being anti-white is okay? How did you extrapolate that? Where did that come from?
Hell, it's encouraged even.
Where?
Next, the Polygon article goes on to gush over some fan art made of Nessa online, which, quite frankly, I find a little creepy sometimes. It's all for fun though, and some of the drawings are actually pretty impressive. And this is what leads to the final part of these Pokemon controversies too. You see, there was lots of fan art going around about Nessa this week, and a few of the drawings actually sparked a controversy of their own. Specifically, one Japanese artist was attacked viciously, all for making Nessa the wrong shade of a color, according to some SJWs. For more details, let's turn to an article from Bounding Into Comics called Japanese Artist Najuko Harassed and Accused of Racism Due to Fan Art of Pokemon's Nessa. Check this bullshit out. A Japanese fan artist has been subjected to harassment and accusations of racism due to a lighting choice on a drawing of the recently announced Pokemon character Nessa, which slightly lightened the tone of her skin color. On June 13th, artist Najuko shared an image they had drawn of the Pokemon Sword and Shield Water-type gym leader to their personal Twitter page. For the drawing, Najuko chose a softer, muted palette choice for Nessa, resulting in a stylistic and colorful piece which deviated slightly from the colors displayed in her official artworks. Well, this all looks fine to me, just a lighter shade on the already light brown skinned Nessa. Apparently SJWs don't understand colors, drawings, lighting, and art, because if they're going to call this racist, well, that's just crazy.
So you're comfortable calling her skin tone light brown now, but earlier in the video it was brown or something. Consistency, everybody. It's what no bullshit's best at. But anywho, this reminds me a lot of a controversy that happened about the Steven Universe fandom a while back, wherein someone drew one of the characters skinnier than they were in the actual show, and there were fans that actually decried this in such a way so as to tell the artist to kill themselves. Unfortunately, this is just a side effect of having a fandom. Fandoms are made up of millions of people, and in those people, you're gonna have vocal bad actors. It sucks, and I wish we could do better, but it's also unavoidable.
The image quickly gained traction among Najuku's almost 60,000 Twitter followers, and once the piece was fully circulating across social media, Najuku's post was quickly descended upon by users accusing Najuku of whitewashing and racism. Then there's a couple of tweets saying things like, "Nessa is a brown girl, please make sure your art reflects that, frowny face." And also, "This would be cute if you got her skin tone correct, whitewashing is ugly." Wow, just wow. Now we're talking about whitewashing of a fan art picture drawn based on a character from a Nintendo video game. We have clearly reached peak wokeness here, guys. This is 2019 and current year in a nutshell, make no mistake.
Except it's not. Again, this is a trend for very vocal minority groups when it comes to fandoms. This is a thing that happens every time that fan art gets popular that doesn't necessarily show the original character in the way that certain fans think they should be perceived. I personally find that that particular behavior is abhorrent and it stifles art. This is one of the reasons that I've never gotten angry at people for drawing me as a big-breasted female, sometimes with cat ears, and sometimes with tentacles.
Anti-white racism being slung at people who accidentally pissed off the social justice warrior PC police. What a goddamn joke. In the end, clearly this artist isn't racist, and they've done nothing offensive or wrong. Really, the SJWs have just shown their true colors here. They want things to be darker and, of course, less white, because they hate white people and want less of us around.
Again, where did you extrapolate from this particular article and from this situation that people want less white people around? Even if I'm being charitable and assume that you pulled that from people wanting Nessa to be colored brown, the character was originally colored brown. There's nothing about people preferring the character be colored brown that immediately means that they want fewer white people in the world. This is literally just great replacement. That's all this is. You're literally just advocating for the great replacement conspiracy. That's all this video is. This is just a video using Pokemon as a framework to peddle the fucking great replacement theory. This is just a freaking white supremacist spook mask. How did I find myself in this timeline?
At least in public places and in popular things, like video games, movies, TV shows, etc.
That doesn't change it. Framing it around media does not change the fact that you literally just peddled great replacement. For those who aren't aware, just so I can go ahead and clarify, the great replacement theory is this dumb idea that brown people are going to end up co-populating with white people to the point where whiteness is erased from our culture. If it sounds stupid, that's because it is.
This is also another glowing example of the leftists trying to invade and take over popular spaces. Most of these whiners probably never liked or played Pokemon a day in their life before this.
He says, unironically, as no bullshit, who is a fan of Pokemon, but still was grossly uninformed on the mechanical evolution of the Pokemon franchise. And how would you even get that Pokemon fans hadn't actually played Pokemon? Did we move from Great Replacement to gatekeeping? Is that what we did? Because, like, that's what it sounds like. That's really what it sounds like we did.
But when they saw other people really liked it and how popular and talked about Pokemon is, that's when the liberals decided to pounce and make their moves to take over and make everything all politically correct and stupid once again.
And you don't think that your video, an attempt to police the politics around this particular issue, is not another way to try to make things politically correct, just in a right-wing sense instead of a left-wing sense? Is that irony not lost on you?
What do you guys think? Are these Pokemon controversies really legitimate? Are you a fan of the series, and will you be playing the new game in November? And what do you think about the supposed whitewashing of the Nessa character? Comment your thoughts and everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit.
Tell you what, instead of commenting, I'll just make this video. As for the 3 things you mentioned, I will be playing the games in November. Your comments on this controversy sound incredibly ill-informed, and I think that people who are getting up in arms about fan art of a fictional character definitely are getting upset over something very small. But anyways, that was No Bullshit, using an episode about Pokemon to talk about a racial replacement conspiracy theory. What a wonderful timeline we found ourselves in, everybody. Kinda want to slam my head into my soundproofing now. Anywho, let me know what you guys thought about the video down below, and if you enjoyed it, do the like, sharing, and commenting, and all that other fun stuff that you're supposed to do to make YouTube work for me. As always, everyone, insert end of video tagline here.